In today's video, I'm going to share with you the profit and loss statement from my 13th year in business as a florist. That year happened to be 2020, the year the world shut down. I could not have predicted how that year would have gone. In today's video, I'm going to explain what was going on in my business that year, how I still managed to make money, what I spent money on even though everything was shut down, and why at the end of the year I was even more dedicated to building community than ever before. My name's Ellen Frost. I'm the owner of Local Color Flowers, and I've been a florist for over 15 years. I write a weekly newsletter all about flowers, which you should definitely check out, and I host an online community called FlowerMore for flower nerds who want more flowers in their life. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Before I jump into the numbers, I want to just give some context about where my business was in 2020. 2020 started like any other year. I had about 40 or 50 weddings on the books I was getting ready to do. I was also really focused on things in the shop that I wanted to work on. So, our retail on Saturday mornings, floral design classes, flower club events, private gatherings. I wanted to spend more time working in the shop rather than traveling to other places to work. In March of 2020, everything changed. I spent basically the entire year trying to reinvent the business so that we could continue to thrive in the changed world that we found ourselves in. In 2020, my first wedding of the season was supposed to be March 21st, 2020. It was canceled 5 days before the event. I mean, this was unheard of. I had had a few weddings in my career cancel, but none with 5 days notice. And within days of that, the rest of my events for 2020 canceled. And honestly, I gave a lot of that money back, like the deposits and payments that we had been given, because I had just never been in that situation before. So it didn't everybody was so stressed. I just wanted to help my clients not be as stressed. And so I did end up giving a lot of those payments and those deposits back. So looking at my income, my actual income for 2020, my wedding income was $15,000. That was down from $110,000 the year before. My class income was 1,000, down from 15,000 the year before. 7,000 for holidays, 6,000 for parties, 5,000 from corporate events, which I had been trying to build up for a few years. So the year before, corporate events were 15,000, and speaking engagements, which were $1,000. And that actually came later in the season when I did some Zoom presentations. So the most income I had in 2020 came from single orders or subscriptions, $276,000. The year before, that was $142,000. So when things shut down, almost all of the revenue streams that I had been working with uh, were no longer possible to me. And I really had to quickly pivot and spend all of my efforts on this one revenue stream, which was creating a single order subscription program that was delivered to people's houses. And with that $276,000, my total income for 2020 was $309,000, which really was only about $10,000 or $15,000 less than I had made or had brought in the year before. So my cost of goods sold in 2020, my day labor was a little bit higher than normal actually, because once I made the pivot to the bucket subscriptions and single orders, I actually needed to hire a few more day laborers early on in 2020 to help fill those orders and make those deliveries. I mean, that's how busy we were, and that's how much community support we had once things started to shut down in 2020. My transportation costs were $1,000. That was just gas. And then my material costs, I spent $152,000 on flowers that year. And for me, that was really important because I wanted to make sure that I was still able to buy flowers from my growers. Those growers had been planting those crops for over a year. And to have, no sales outlets for those crops would be devastating to them. So it was important for me to figure out a revenue stream which I could I could engage in during 2020 so that I could continue to buy flowers from the growers. So my overall cost of goods sold for that year was $164,000. It was about 50% of my income, and that is probably higher than it should have been. But even though I was selling a lot of flowers and my prices were in line with market prices, my flower costs were very high. Local flowers just are higher in cost than conventionally sourced flowers. So just to recap, my income was 309, my cost of goods sold was 164,000, and then my gross profit for that year was $145,000, and that's what I used to pay the rest of my bills. And my bills in 2020, I had $4,000 to pay in advertising, which seems weird because why would I be advertising when things had shut down? But I had actually invested that $4,000 in LocoFlow swag, like business swag at the beginning of the year. So I had bought t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, posters, and I planned to sell these every Saturday when my shop was open for retail sales. But of course, the shop shut down and I had really nowhere to sell this swag. So I had made the investment of $4,000, but it actually took me about 2.5 years to sell all of these products. My auto expense was 5,000. This was some insurance costs, admin 15,000. My rent and utilities were 27,000, and then my payroll expenses was $47,000. This money went to pay for my three floral designers that I really wanted to make sure that I could keep on staff during that year. So they were working part time, but they were able to still continue to work and get paid during the 2020 season. So my total expenses were $98,000 for that year. So amidst all of the craziness of 2020, my income was 309, my cost of goods sold was 164,000, gross profit was 145,000, and my total expenses were $98,000, leaving me a net income or profit of $47,000. So that's about 15% of my income. Overall, 7 to 10% is great for profit, but 15% of my total income was really great. And actually, this turned out to be my most profitable year ever, which was really surprising to me because at the beginning of the year, I was, unsure that we would even be able to continue. And we ended up having the most profitable year in our career. Some of the takeaways, just to explain the takeaways of that year. That year was very challenging. It was very stressful. There was a lot of unknowns. But amidst all of that chaos, there were positive. And the number one positive thing that came out of this is that our community really rallied around us during this year. I had spent the last 15 years of my business life building community in Baltimore around local flowers. And when things shut down in 2020 and we needed to pivot and start a new business model, our community rallied behind us like I could not have ever imagined. They were the key to keeping us in business during 2020. Being able to stay in business also meant that I was able to keep our team. And while the expense of that was high, it was important for me to keep our team working. And I was able to do that with the support of our community. I was really glad to be able to keep the team working. Another takeaway that I realized at the end of 2020 was that being a small and nimble business really made it possible for me to make very fast pivots. So when things shut down in March, within about 2 to 3 days, we were back up and running with an entirely different business model that served us really well for the next 2.5 years. So if I had been a bigger business with a lot more roadblocks, it would have been harder to make that change that quickly. And at the end of 2020, I just realized that community building was the most important thing that I wanted to do around flowers. And at the end of the year, I realized that I wanted to expand my community building efforts to outside of Baltimore. I wanted to expand to a wider community. So I started writing my newsletter. I started my online community, FlowerMore. 2020 just made me realize how really important flower community is. So if you like this video, please be sure to leave a comment and subscribe to my channel.